Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Tech Titan for this week. And this week we have with us Vishal Nagpal, who is a seasoned data science and analytics leader with extensive experience across various industries. And he has also played many roles, worn many hats over his career. Currently, he is serving as a data science and analytics leader at Amazon, where he focuses on ensuring a trustworthy shopping experience for his customers. Uh, he has portrayed many facets of leadership skills and played many roles, including but not limited to VP and head of data science at G5. He has also led teams at Award and HiPi segments and as a senior manager at American Express, where he specialized in customer marketing data in data science. So beyond his corporate roles, Vishal is also quite motivated about mentoring and supporting startups, especially in deep tech and AI space. And this evening, we'll get to know from him what drives him, what keeps him going, and what is his take on the future of this space in general. So good to have you with us again, Vishal.
Thanks, Akash. Thanks a lot for the introduction and pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Now, to start off with, I would like to know now that you are at such an esteemed position in your career, how did all of this start? Were you always interested in analytics? Was it something that was natural to you, or did something happen that propelled you into this direction?
So I think honestly, it happened by chance. So I did my uh, post my engineering. I worked for a few years, and then I did my MBA. And then post my MBA, I joined a telecom company, Idea Cellular. So there was certain work that we were doing around. So I was initially interested in marketing, right? And then when I was doing marketing, we realized that a lot of the analytics has to be done by the marketeers themselves. They have to analyze data, they have to make
Right.
recommendations, how to kind of price it, right? And that's where I think somewhere my interest generated, right? And I, because coming from an engineering bank, but I always engineering background, I always had like a mathematical inclination. So somewhere that aspect of
Mm.
analysis, insights is something that piqued my interest, right? And then I moved into consulting, and that is where my journey actually began very in a more methodical way in data science and analytics,
Right,
where
right.
I kind of started working on models, and then one thing led to another, and then I started kind of developing interest to it. But honestly, to your point, I had never thought about it to begin with, right? And at the same time, while I was going through this change, the industry was also going through this change, right? I've seen, like, I think back in like about 10 years back, a lot of it, there were a lot of requirements coming in from clients as well. Hey, we want to kind of analyze the data more, or we want to kind of help us make these decisions more. And then we realized at the end of the day, like, a lot of it can actually happen while you can kind of use your data in a way, right? So how you can kind of make sure you can use your data to kind of drive more revenue, how you can kind of make sure you can use data to kind of reduce customer attrition, right? All of those kind of things. So slowly one thing led to another, and then I got really deeper into it. But yeah, it happened by chance. I had never thought about it, honestly.
Oh, that's such a candid answer, Vishal. And it is great to know from you that you have been a part of the highs and lows of the industry. As you mentioned, you have seen it change right in front of you. So now, when you are at the helm of a career, how do you still stay updated with all of the incoming changes, with the latest trends, advancements, and how do you stay up to date in that regard?
So honestly, I think it's very difficult. Right now, the way things are going, I don't know like how many of the folks have been kind of trying to stay updated. Honestly, I think we are at a point where the updates are having like every week, right? Every week,
Right.
there's new information that's happening. Especially in the generative AI space, there are new models that are coming in. Last week only, OpenAI came up with a model which is GPT 4.0, right? Which is an omni
Yeah.
model. You can use text, video, audio, all of those kind of things. That was, no one was expecting that, right? Now suddenly it has threw everyone off guard. Like, okay, what is this about, right? So how I try to keep myself updated is more around I obviously read a lot of newsletters. I've subscribed to a lot of newsletters that I try to kind of ensure that I'm going through on a daily basis. That's one. I listen to podcasts. That's where I kind of get a lot of my insights on some of the what are the tech changes that are happening, what are the implications of it. So those are a few things that I do. And then three, I also kind of have some of the offline communities that I have that I'm part of, where we kind of discuss, okay, what are the changes that are happening? See, because I think what is more important is not just the changes that are happening from a technology space outside, but how kind of those changes are getting adopted by people in the industry, right? So I've been able to kind of create some sort of a circle to kind of learn from others also how they're kind of doing it, and see that okay, if there's something that I can kind of also incorporate in my work and vice versa, and share my insights what I am doing over there, right? So those are few things, few ways in which we kind of at least I try to kind of stay updated.
Yeah, and you mentioned a really interesting point. The advancement of technology and its adoption are two different aspects. So, when we see adoption of this generative AI, be it any chat GPT models or even its competitors, be it Gemini or even Cloud, where do you see all of this together is propelling the industry towards in the next 5 years or 10 years down the road? Or let's talk 5 years, even short-term effects. What do you think will be the impact, both in a positive and negative way, on this whole space of data?
So I think I'll still say that I don't know how it is going. I think a lot of us are kind of taking as it comes, but at least the direction that we are seeing, right? Basis a lot of changes that we're seeing. A lot of these companies are looking for something which is, we call it as artificial general intelligence, right? What we're talking about is like how some of these models can kind of reason out, right? For instance, historically, a lot of these models are okay, if you give them data, they'll kind of give you using those insights, they'll kind of give you an output, right? So for instance, if you've seen a customer who likes say buying electronic watches or fitness watches, he might also be inclined to have some of the other gadgets like maybe earpods and things like that,
Hmm.
right? So which is more like, okay, I have something and then I can maybe predict or expect something to happen. With an artificial general intelligence, it's a whole ball game altogether, right? The idea is like how you can have that conversation, how you can have those reasoning, right? For instance, if tomorrow I want to have that conversation, hey, I'm thinking about opening a new startup, right?
Hmm.
Can you give me ideas? And then you're having that discussion, and then, oh no, I don't think, I don't have money. Can you give me some other things and things like that, right? So uh, it's a bit scary to think about it as well, because I think there are pockets in which people are saying that okay, we might have those advanced versions of Alexas where you're kind of talking with them, you're having those conversations and having those logical reasonings. But maybe there's another section where they're saying that okay, it's still too far and
Hmm.
things like that, right? So that's one change which might happen. We might get into that aspect. The second thing that will happen is like because of a lot of these developments that are happening, right? A lot of assisted work is gonna come, right? So for instance, someone who was kind of coding something, so
Hmm.
they would use a lot of these tools to increase their productivity 5x or
Productivity, yeah.
10x, right? How that is something that will actually be a lot game changer. Then one of the things that I was listening to one of the podcasts last week, and then they was talking about like how they've been able to kind of develop an app in like 1 week, which was taking them about 6 months or like 9 months earlier, right? So all of those things were gonna happen. So the go to market is something which will gonna change very
Come down.
drastically. The third thing which is gonna happen is I feel at the same time there's a lot of risk of fraud that's gonna increase as well, right? Because how we are not able to kind of differentiate between the actual reality and the virtual reality, right? So we are already seeing some of it that's happening where some of the actors' identities are being kind of compromised and things like that, right? We
Yes.
are we are seeing some of the content which was very historic, but people are able to kind of regenerate that content, and seems like it is actually the historic facts
Yes.
have also been changed, right? That's where a lot of cybersecurity and a lot of AI ethics and AI protection has kind of
Yes.
come into play.
Governance rules.
So I think there's a whole new space that's on the AI governance, AI ethics is something which will gonna be really big. There's a huge space which will gonna be on a productivity side, and then there's obviously gonna be some bit of artificial general intelligence, where a lot of tasks that we were kind of having getting done from some of the low complexity tasks from humans might get replaced, for the lack of the better word, honestly.
Yeah, but you mentioned your second point regarding increase in productivity, like that app getting, which took 9 months being done in less than a month. But what does it imply on the number of jobs or the opportunities? Does that have a negative correlation, or does it simply mean that we are going to produce better or more number of useful things?
So I feel there gonna be definitely gonna be more opportunities, right? Because I think what we are focusing on some of the jobs where the productivity is increasing, but there are a lot many new jobs that are getting created, right? For instance, there are jobs which are getting created on how we can have to maintain an operations of an LLM model, right? Because it's a huge effort in itself, right? If you see, there are huge data centers that are kind of coming
Mm.
up, which will kind of hosting a lot of these models. So in one way, there would be certain jobs where the demand will be lesser, but there are a lot of jobs where new demands will get created. For instance, one of the development that is happening in this particular space is like there will be a lot of agent work or agent work that will happen. What I mean by that is like if you want to tomorrow kind of want to say that, hey, so and so, can you book an itinerary for me from say Delhi to London, right?
Mm.
So booking an itinerary from Delhi to London includes like about maybe 3 to 4 steps, right? You need to book a flight, you need to book a hotel, you need to book a cab, you need to kind of book all of your day trips that you want to do, maybe
Okay.
sightseeing that you want to do, right? So if today you have to do it, you have to go through like 5 different sites or 10 different places that you have to do it right now. If you have an agent which will kind of say, hey, can you do it, that agent will have like 5 other sub agents which will kind of do it. So a lot of software development related work, a lot of backend engineering work is something which is going to be really huge. So what will happen is there will be a redistribution of skills that will happen. So something which we were doing earlier may not be that much required, but there's a lot of new skills that will come into play that people will have to kind of pick up. So that's how I see it.
So adaptability again is a very important concept going forward.
Absolutely.
Uh, So how do you suggest the students of today who are not necessarily pursuing very advanced programs? Because as we know, be it the bachelor's or the master's program, are not really keeping up with the times or with these changes. So how do they ensure that they are job ready for tomorrow once they get out, let's say graduate or become a postgraduate? How do they make sure that they are market fit, market ready, and then they are deployable in these new age skills? What would be your advice for them to additionally pick up?
So one philosophical and then maybe one tactical. Philosophical is that from an attitude perspective, you have to be really open-minded and you have to be really open to changes. I think that is something which is super important. That because, like I said, what we're seeing today may or may not be relevant with the changes that are happening maybe six
Right.
months down the line. So even if that's the case, I think that's okay, right? Because no one is expecting someone to have like an experience of like 3 years or 4 years of generative AI. I think what a lot of our hiring happens from an attitude perspective, right? Whatever that you've done, do you know it
Absolutely,
well or
yes.
not, right? If you know that well, and if you have the aptitude to kind of pick up new skills, I think that's good enough, right? So 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 one I'll say is like your aptitude to kind of adapt. The second is which something that we also have like an Amazon philosophy during recruiting or hiring, which is like dive deep. Like whatever thing that anyone is kind of picking up, just make sure that they go into details of it, right? So because a lot of time I see youngsters, they'll say, okay, I've built a model or I've done this thing, but they'll never know the details about it. The once we go into the interviews and we say, hey, what code did you use, right? What were the blockages that you felt? Or then they'll kind of struggle, right? They'll not, or maybe perhaps they'll not know the maths behind those algorithms, right? So if you're able to go deeper into the concepts, I think that's where it's always easier to kind of learn new concepts, right? And then any changes that might happen, say 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years down the line, I think if you're able to kind of pick up those like the way you did earlier, I think that's okay. I think that should not be a problem, honestly.
Right, you mentioned this thing about attitude, and I'm glad you highlighted that because people always think it's all about knowing things, answering all questions out of 10 on 10 questions asked in interviews. But this is the ground reality. Many times it's about convincing the interviewer that you will be able to get the job done. Maybe not with your current knowledge, but you will be able to pick it up and get the thing done. And that's what uh, is an important part. But how does someone, let's say, who is uh, wanting, willing, having the desire to have this skill but doesn't currently have it. Maybe they are not adaptable enough. Maybe they realize this flaw. So, what would be that small change in their daily habit or something that they can read or follow that will help them inculcate this habit?
Uh, so I think this is something which they'll have to learn on. So what might happen is, so my suggestion is like no one should go with what is the wave about, right? They should find what is their
Interesting.
best at. I think that is more important. Again, I'll go back to a little bit of philosophy, right? Everyone has their strengths. Someone would be good at
Mm.
coding, someone would be good at management, someone would be good at design, right? Someone would be good at creative, right? So, what is the sweet spot where people are able to kind of identify that where do they operate at their maximum level is super important. Now, someone who is young or maybe who is into college may not know it. I also agree on that, right? Because they've never exposed themselves to it.
Right. Yes.
So the way they should ideally do it is like they should do a little bit of testing, right? Okay. And one of the ways to kind of do it is like either they join those courses. So first of all, they need to understand that whether they'll kind of are finding interest in that or not, right? So that's one. The second is like if they are able to kind of find interest, they need to question themselves that is this something that they can kind of do for the next,
Mm.
if not lifetime, but at least maybe 1 or 2 years for that matter, right? If the answer is yes, then they should continue. The third is like they should look for, I think we are in India, we are at a phase wherein there's a lot of opportunities, honestly. I think if we forget about the Amazons, Microsoft, and Googles of the world, there are opportunities there as well. But there are a lot of startups also, right, which are looking for people who are very motivated and are want to kind of deliver. So
Mm.
try to find out certain internships over there as well, right? So if you are able to kind of do certain internships and do actual work, then you'll kind of understand, hey, do I like it or not? The moment you anyone who's done kind of these 2 3 things, they'll be able to understand, hey, is this something which I'm can do it for the next 2 years? Is this something that I can excel? If not, then maybe they need to go back and see, okay, what is their strengths lie, and then maybe redo it once more, right? So that's something that I'll kind of suggest. But yeah, there's no quick way or quick hack to it. But
Absolutely.
I'll definitely suggest that people should not go with the wave. Like, okay, um, right now the good thing is India is at a point where there are opportunities for everyone in a lot of spaces, right? Even in as simple as agriculture, so things like that, right? So I think the people only used to have those mindsets that okay, which is like a growth mindset. There's also a book on it. I'll highly recommend people to kind of go through it. There's a book on growth mindset. That is something that a person should always have.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you about reading and podcast and newsletter suggestions. It's a question from one of our audience members, Shivatsan. So he's asking for some reading or daily update kind of suggestions. You gave one already. If you have any more, then please enlighten us.
Yeah, so if you want to stay updated on, say, some of the technology changes, there is one podcast like Hot Folk, which is gives summarizes like what all the news of all the technology changes that are happening. Then there are a podcast on practical AI machine learning, which is also pretty good that someone can kind of follow. On newsletters, there are medium.com. I'll highly recommend. There you will have to kind of find out the authors that you feel are most relevant for you, and then you can start following them so that you can kind of have those newsletters in your
Mm.
inboxes. Yeah, I think mostly that. And then I think from a book's perspective, I think someone who is starting out, I'll highly recommend Growth Mindset. I think it's a pretty good book. People should definitely read it.
Absolutely. Point taken. And I guess many will benefit out of it. And Vishal, like now coming to your current workplace, Amazon. What is the culture like? Would you like to tell us a bit about how is work-life balance over there? How is work pressure?
So I think it is okay, I would say, but at my level, I think any company that would go, I think the pressure is there, honestly. But I talk a little bit more about the culture. So one of the things that we focus a lot in Amazon is like a day one culture, right? And this is something which Jeff Bezos kind of came into. If you think about someone who's coming into companies in new or day one, right? He's very excited, he's very motivated. He said, "Oh, I'll make these changes. I'll do this. I'll make these recommendations, and I'll kind of absolutely kill it or excel, right?" But suddenly, what happens is like people start interacting with others and say, "Hey," people will start maybe bitching, for the lack of the better word. "Hey, यहाँ पे तो कुछ होता नहीं है, यहाँ पे the manager is not good," and things like that, right? And then you start getting into a mentality, "Hey, why should I do it, right? Why should I make these changes? Why should I make these innovations? Why should I drive these recommendations?" And which we call as a day two culture, right? So that's what Jeff Bezos will always talk about, that you always need to ensure that your teams and your people always have like a day one mindset, that okay, always we'll be kind of questioning the status quo, right? It is not important, irrespective of what others are doing. What you need to ensure is that you're questioning the status quo. If things were done the way it was, you have to question at why they were doing the way it is, right? Is there a better way to do it? Can we break them and kind of start again and things like that, right? So those are few things that are super important. And I think the second thing that I'll want to highlight in terms of like Amazon, where we ensure that that is something people do a lot, is ownership, right? The ownership is super important for someone to excel at Amazon. What I mean by that is like it's maybe a very small or a small word, but the importance is like we expect people, even people who are starting out new, fresh from campus, right, to ensure that they have empowerment to make those changes, or they have empowerment to kind of drive things. They should not be dependent on their managers and say, hey Vishal, or hey Akash, are you okay if I do this? Can I do that? So if there is something that you find that is wrong, then you then and there fix it. You don't have to have like Vishal or Akash tell you that, okay, can you fix this, right? So things like that. So that is where you start owning things, and you also say that, okay, if I'm doing this, I know that this will only improve the project, or this will only improve the scenario. So those are few things that I maybe want to call out, that something which is super important, that we try to ensure that we maintain that culture at Amazon. But even if someone is not working at Amazon, I think these are few things which will always be relevant, and something that they should always strive for.
Absolutely, yes. And like you mentioned, at your position, pressure is always there. So how do you maintain the balance between family and work at this level?
So by the way, I have like a 19-month-old kid, right? So that is super important for me, because I try to make sure that I take out time to spend with that boy, right? He at times it becomes difficult. I'm taking this call from home, and I know that there were times when he was kind of banging on the door and he wanted me to kind of come out. So I think the way I kind of do it is I try to make sure that I have certain slots where I definitely spend time, right? So I in the mornings before my day starts, I'll kind of spend some time with him. In the evenings, if I'm at home, or if after I come up to office, I make sure that I spend time in the evenings. I don't keep those calls. So being in the US, I have a lot of calls that I do with my US partner. So I make sure that there's specific time when before my kid sleeps, I don't keep those calls, and then I log in back maybe a little later and say, okay, to catch up on things. And then I try to ensure that weekends again, I try to keep some time for the kid, for the family, and not look at emails and not look at work. So I think it's also important at the same time that you're super efficient during the day, right? Because you know that, okay, if you're not efficient during the day, then you'll have to have some sort of spillover. So that is something that I also try to make sure that I'll not get into a lot of long coffee discussions and things like that. So those are a few things that I might avoid. So yeah.
That's good to know, and that's great advice actually for anyone starting out. Uh, and I hope that you will be reaching greater heights and also teaching us a master class again on how to balance things. once you're over there. So, you mentioned working with cross-cultural teams. You're managing a team in US. You definitely would have managed teams in India and all. So, any noticeable differences when it comes to dealing with different cultures, people from different regions, backgrounds, mindsets? So, and how do you manage it at your level?
Yes, I think one of the things I want to point out is at times in India, right? The fact is that we take ourselves for granted. The challenge is that we feel that we don't have privileges at times, or we don't have rights. And I think somewhere over my course of career, I have kind of learned it the hard way. What I mean by that is, like, if you see a lot of people in the US, right, they're very particular on the fact that if I have like a Thanksgiving, or if I have a Christmas, I'll not log in, or I'll not kind of do my work during those times, right? I think somewhere in India, we are not too respectful of our time. We are not too respectful of our family time. So I think one of the things that I'll kind of tell the folks over here who end up working in those cross-cultural environment, or people with the US, make sure that you also take that privilege. There is family time, there is festival time. So that is something that is super important. It's not like we will be available during Diwali as well. We'll also be available during Christmas. So those things kind, right? So that's one. The second thing is, I believe one of the things that I feel from a cultural perspective, which was super important for us to kind of learn from US counterparts, is how they kind of manage time as well. I think they are able to kind of ensure that, and again, unfortunately, I've seen, I'll be self-critical over here. At times, I've seen a lot of Indian. We spend a lot of time in coffees. We spend a lot of time in lunches, and what might end up having is, like, we might end up working 14 hours, 15 hours in the office, right? But if you see in the US, people, they'll come in, they'll start working. Honestly, they'll have lunches on their desk, and then they'll say, okay, and I want to come out, and then either I'll do my personal time or I'll do my family time, right? So those are few things that it's super important to know, right? If you're spending 14, 15 hours in office, but if your productivity is like, okay, 7 or 8 hours, then it doesn't make sense. But yeah, if you're spending 15 hours and your productivity is actually 15 or 16 hours, then it's good. So one of the things that, at least in my team, I don't encourage people to kind of do a lot of late nights, do of stretching, right? Until unless, because if people are doing a consistent basis, I'll question that, okay, either your productivity is low or there's something else. If there's more work, then you have to kind of come to me and let me know, and then we can kind of repurpose work. So those are few things that are super important to kind of know and keep in mind while you're kind of doing working.
Right, absolutely. And I think many people will be happy to hear this, especially the first point from you, where you talked about managing personal time. But yes, it is indeed important. Sometimes people get lost in work, and we tend to forget that there are things outside of it as well. What to do in the case that when you said, let's say if you have more work, you are supposed to go to your manager or your higher ups and tell them. So what is the right way of conveying it? And how do you tell them without, let's say, coming off as someone who is trying to slack off? There is a thin line between the two.
Yeah. I think the way we do it is, or at least I do it, is I have like a very objective discussion with my teams, right? And the way we do it is, like, if you have some sort of a project or a task, right? Especially in the tech space, you'll always have, like, what is the effort that you need, right? Now, if the effort is, suppose someone says, hey, I need about like 15 days to kind of do it, right? Or 15 man days to kind of do it, then what we mean by that is, like, do I have 15 days? Do I have 30 days? Or do I have 7 days? If I have 7 days, then it will mean that person will end up working from 8 hours to 16 hours. Then the conversation with the manager has to be, do you want me actually to double my effort for the next 7 days? So that's one. The second is, like, is the effort aligned between your managers and what you are thinking, right? If the effort is not aligned, a lot many times what happens is managers operate at a level where they don't understand the complexities of the work. I'll be honest in that, right? Especially people who are managing people for a really long time. They've been little away from the technical aspects. It might be easy for them to say, "Hey, this is very simple. Can you do it in like 2 days?" And then the person has to kind of do in a very objective discussion and tell them, "Hey, so and so, this includes 5 steps. The step one will have this effort, step two will have this effort, and so on and so forth." Right. So there's a very objective discussion that needs to
Right.
happen. So once that has happened, and then once everyone is aligned, then it's not something that very unreasonable ask, right? But to your earlier point, I think at times where people are in an environment where they have to kind of consistently stretch because of genuine reasons, where the manager also aligns of the effort, and the person is also aligned on the efforts. I think that's where people have to understand the fact that, hey, is this something for a short term, or is it something that is like a culture of this company or a culture of this team which will continue to happen for a longer time? I think, and that's where the person has to kind of have that conversation, whether the person is okay to have it for short term, whether the person is not okay to have it even in short term, or if it's long term, then what should be the solutions, again, okay or not okay. So those are a few things. Honestly, I think we are at a point wherein a lot of people are okay having those conversation. I can tell you that, right? A lot of people who are even starting out, they're okay to have that conversation, and they should not take themselves for granted. They should not undervalue themselves, and I think those conversations should not be avoided, at least.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No. Spinning off this, at this point you have had leadership positions and you've held them for quite some time, and even at prominent companies like right now at Amazon, previously Z5, American Express. What are some key lessons you have learned along the way, and or how did they drive you to change your leadership style, if at all? No. And what are some key learnings that you can tell to people who are starting out, maybe in the early stages of leadership careers?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think different companies have taught me in a very different way. And I'll not talk about these companies, but also about the consulting in general. I think consulting helped me ensure that we are working of the highest quality. I think that is something that we did. At American Express, I think one of the things that I learned a lot was customer is the king, right? I
Mm.
don't know if there is anyone who's kind of experienced American Express customer service. They'll know that, okay, this is something one can actually vouch for. I've been a American Express customer for a very, very long time, and I don't intend to kind of change that because of the same reasons. Now, if you are working for it, right, the one of the things that you should kind of do it is that as a company, if your philosophy is that customer is the king, then whatever work that you're also doing, then you also have to keep your customer mindset, right? How you can make customer lives easier, how you can kind of build products or build solutions which can help customers or can delight customers. So that is something that I kind of learned, internalized a lot during my stint at American Express. Something that I kind of learned in Z5 and I kind of appreciated a lot was you have to understand the business a lot. So Z5 is a business of content, honestly. So you because different contents have different genres and different target audience, right? So if you are in a data science and analytics space, you can't say that, okay, this is something that I only understand the tech part of it,
Mm.
but honestly, what you need to also understand is like how that content is kind of impacting the customers, how that
Right.
content is getting
Yes.
adopted. You are able to have that conversations with the business around that content is super important, right? So that's one aspect that I learned a lot from Z5. Then I talked about a few concepts of Amazon, like day one culture and ownership. But one more thing that I've learned a lot at Amazon, that is again one of the very peculiar things at Amazon is focus a lot on data. So I don't know if you guys know it or not. There are no concepts of PPT. So there is a documents that we write, and in those documents there is like a page zero. So page zero has metrics, like so. as an analytics and a data science team, we'll have metrics. Okay, how many revenue we've saved, how many costs that how many revenue that we've generated, how many costs that we've saved, how many queries we're running, and things like that. So there's a concept in Amazon which is like good intent versus outcome, right? So um and what I mean by that is like, okay, say in 2024, I will deliver on this particular model, right? So this is a good intent. I want to deliver. What will happen if I don't able? Maybe there might be things that might happen that I'm not able to deliver on that model.
Right.
How you change intent is like, I will deliver the model which will increase my revenue from say X to Y, right? And that's where I make it a very metric specific and outcome specific, right? So that is something where a lot of focus is on like how you're moving the needle, how you're kind of very outcome oriented, and how you are focusing on the data, right? Intent is good, but the data has to speak, right? So those are few things that I've learned at Amazon, which helped me.
That's a very interesting thing you have mentioned about no PPT culture. So how does it work? Like a page zero containing the metrics, then page one, page two, all of them elaborating on the metrics?
Yeah, so the concept is in general, a lot many times if when we've been into PPT, so I've always been a PPT culture, right? So it's only Amazon which is like very peculiar. You go in there, you have bullet points, and then
Right.
whosoever has in their mind, and they'll just go through and ram through the presentation, and then people are kind of understanding, okay, what did this guy say, and then things like that,
Hmm.
right? So when you're doing like a PPT culture, the person who is kind of giving the PPT is always in charge at
Yes.
most of the times. I'm not saying that people who are receiving the PPT don't question the content. They do, but the lot of the information is not revealed because the presenter has that information. He'll reveal it during the presentation. It
Hmm.
doesn't give a lot of time to people to kind of review it and things like that. So one of the things which Jeff Bezos felt, he was not a big fan of it. He said that, okay, I want to have, so there are two challenges with this particular concept. One is like I already talked about, wherein the presenter is in the front seat, right? He's
Hmm.
he's kind of leading the presentation. There's not a lot of content or information which is presented in advance. The second is when you're doing a PPT and doing a bullet points, the challenge is at times people have not thought about few things. So if you think about a concept of doing the journaling, right? Why do people
Hmm.
say that, okay, you should write? You should write because it makes you think better, right? People say that, okay, you should maintain a diary, you should pen down your thoughts, and then what do you want to do, and things like that. Journaling has always been important because it makes you think. The moment you start writing down, right, that's where you start questioning yourself. So for instance, if you want to kind of say, hey, I want to launch this new product, so then you'll question that, okay, so the document will have, okay, why is this important, right?
Hmm.
What will happen that if you don't launch this, right? What will be your 3-year roadmap looking like? Is there any other similar product that we've launched in the past? What are the things that you're kind of ensuring that this product, this launch does not fail? So the moment you can kind of start writing it, not in bullets, but in paragraphs, then people will know the entire intent, right? So typically document a reading session in an Amazon is like a 90-minute session. The first 30 minutes is people will go into it. They'll only read the document, right? So there's no one speaking in the document. And everyone is going through it. They're making notes. Ideally, the document is shared like 1 day in advance, 2 days in
Hmm.
advance, but people at times are too busy. So the presenter will make sure that, okay, people get time during the meeting as well. So the first 30 minutes will be gone and kind of going through the document. The next 60 minutes, the presenter don't speak, right? We are not saying that, hey, presenter, can you present your document? What happens is everyone else in the room will start having questions. Hey, on this page one, you wrote this. What did you mean by that? Hey, in page two, these assumptions are wrong, and things like that. So it's a lot of dissecting and unfortunately poking holes into the document. But the intent is not to kind of put down the document or the idea, but the intent is to kind of do that debate, make sure that everyone understands it, so that once we going out of the room and we've made a decision, everyone is aligned that there's no information that was missed and everyone is too confident, right? So that's the whole idea of doing it.
Yeah, so it's a more detailed discussion. It's a more
Super detailed.
comprehensive. Yeah. Comprehensive workflow. It sounds like good idea actually. I think we have a question from audience. Nitya is asking me to ask you to suggest some of the best generative AI tools, I think is what it means, other than ChatGPT that you have tried.
Got it. So, uh, thanks, Nadir, for that question. I think what the way I'll let you know is depending upon like what is your use case, right? So, for instance, if your use case is to do a little bit of chat, to do it in an interface, Chat GPT is actually one of the best tools out there, right? However, if your use case is that you want to kind of build further models or further applications out of it, then maybe ChatGPT may not be the best, right? So one of the other ones which are actually doing really well is Llama. So Llama 3 is out. Llama 2 was pretty strong as well. So that's one foundation model that is doing really well. Then Gemini is definitely good. I can vouch for that. You can use Gemini Pro. Gemini 1.5 has also been launched. That is again pretty good, and they also have a very easy to use interface if you have access to it. Then I'll also say talk about Amazon. We don't talk a lot about it, but Amazon also has a model Titans, so you can also go and use it. Amazon also has AWS Bedrock, where you can get access to all of those models. So
Yes.
ChatGPT, Llama, Gemini, and all of those, right? So you can always use this. And then one of the other models which is pretty good is Claude. So that is something that we also kind of use a lot in our use cases. It's good for a lot of text related, at least use cases.
Yeah. Perfectly summed up then, Vishal. I think that should have answered your question with that. And this was quite comprehensive, all of this discussion, and thank you for sharing your nuggets of wisdom with us. I'll leave you with one final question, which would be any plans for the weekends? How are you going to enjoy them?
Yeah, so like I said, my weekends I look forward to my spending time with the kid. So, and then I also try to have some personal time, maybe either doing swimming or playing tennis. But yeah, this time, because thankfully, after the rains in Bangalore, swimming pools are open now, so I'm hoping to take my kid to the swimming pool back again. We were not able to do that for some time now, so that is something that I'm looking forward to. Yeah, and yeah, I think maybe and maybe catching up on some of the Netflix or maybe matches also. So yeah, let's say.
Awesome. It has been lovely talking to you and getting to know a lot of intricate as well as important things from you. Uh, Thank you for spending your evening with us. Thank you for enlightening us and wish to talk to you soon sometime again. Have a good
Sure,
weekend and a
sure,
good
Akash.
year ahead.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was lovely speaking to you, and best of luck, everyone. Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Vishal, from all of us.
take care. Bye bye.